My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. And our special guest today is legendary drummer Brian Tichy, who's played with everybody from Foreigner and Ozzy Osbourne, the Dead Daisies, Billy Idol. The list just goes on and on. But we're going to be talking to Brian about today is his annual BONZO Bash and the fact that he was hugely influenced by John Bonham. This is going to be part of our John Bonham tribute, and I thought Brian would be the perfect guy to talk to about that. So let's start right off, Brian, asking you the obvious question. What was it about Bonham's playing that really just made you take notice of what he was doing?
Probably the first thing was a quick combination of his groove and sound.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely a real physical player. I put him right up there with Carmine Appice, which I know I've heard on many occasions that he was really heavily influenced by, and that they were good friends and stuff. And another people should know is I don't know if you still a number of years ago I saw you play with a tribute band called the Moby Dicks. Talk a little bit about that. What was that like? Having a band where you got to play some of this music actually.
Well, the Moby Dicks is basically the house band from the BONZO BASH stuff. So,
okay.
So after, I think at the first BONZO BASH, I said, "Hey, we need a name for the house band. What should we be called?" And Michael Devin, the bass player in the BONZO BASH then, back in 2010, he replied, "Well, we should be the Moby Dicks, of course." And I was like, "Oh, that's great name."
Yeah.
And it stuck, and that was that. So he gets full credit for that. Yeah. So the gigs, I don't know if it might have been a couple years later.
Yeah.
Maybe we started playing out, when we were all around at that time, and we just do some gigs with the Moby Dicks. I mean, we learned a ton of music for the BONZO Bashes. So we just, I just stick on drums all night. We go book some gigs and have fun. But yeah, it's a blast. It's it might be the easiest for me as far as the drum side of things in that gig, just because I grew up, playing Zeppelin all the time, and while we were all huge Zeppelin fans, I think maybe the other guys had a taller order just to learn a lot of songs and retain them. But yeah, we're all Zeppelin fans, so we just it wasn't like this big rehearsed thing. It was more like, okay, let's get together and do it, have a long sound check, and make up a cool set list and go for it.
And Moby Dicks is obvious choice for a name because you being a drummer and all, and Moby Dick. I mean, as far as drummers go, I mean, Moby Dick, the track itself, is quite unique. You don't have too many drummers that kind of have their own recorded solo like that's really famous. I mean, you have guitar players and they're always putting out these little instrumental music, but Moby Dick, for the time it came out, it was a really unique track.
Yeah, it's and if you dig into YouTube a bit, you can hear the full unedited solo that he did. I'm pretty sure that if I remember correctly, the solo, the recorded track, the final version on Zeppelin 2 starts with him pretty much playing with his hands, but there's a couple minutes of great stuff prior to that on the full-length solo, which it's all killer.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. But it's great that back in the day, and that's what was going on in music. You could there was that freedom. You wouldn't hear a drum solo now because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
To put an entire track on as a drum solo. But the one killer redeeming quality of that song is that the main riff is so awesome. It's just a great memorable Jimmy Page riff.
Oh yeah.
And, it's you put it right up there with Black Dog and the Ocean and stuff. It's a killer riff, and so yeah, even that 30 seconds of the music leading into the solo is killer, and the outro as well. But yeah, it's that's why to me the 70s was the best time for music, because people were taking chances, and the listeners and the fans were accepting all of that. That was just a part of the listening experience and being a fan of a band. You put a record on, listen top to bottom, and got into that world. And Zeppelin, I don't even know. I can't remember I know they put out singles here and there, but for the most part they didn't.
Yeah,
I think, you know, maybe Whole Lotta Love was a single or something, but for the most part they didn't, and it wasn't so important because the fan base was so strong, and it was really more about the fan base and the record as a whole, you know.
And it was an interesting time because, you know, you bring up a point that you know, back in the 1970s, you'd be able to hear like a Led Zeppelin, an Aerosmith, and a Black Sabbath track all played on the same radio station, you know.
Well, even better, man, because I already thought of that, is like, you'd be listening to the radio in the 70s, and you possibly within an hour or so, you could hear Freebird into Hotel California, into Stairway to Heaven, into Do You Feel Like We Do, into Roundabout, into Bohemian Rhapsody.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, you're taking me back, man. Yeah.
Into Carry On Wayward Son. It's like, imagine if there were bands around now coming out with all in the same few-year period.
Oh yeah, you know, and you bring up the song Imagine. You might even hear you know, the Beatles or Imagine on the same radio station. I mean, back in the day, they just weren't as much into categorizing music, and I love that because when I listen to music, you know, I allow my ears to kind of be the judge. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what the flavor of a month is or what everybody's listening. If I dig the song, you know, I'm just as much of a Kiss fan and Zeppelin fan and fan of Deep Purple as I am the Eagles and Tom Petty. You know, if it's good music, it's good music, and it'll stand the test of time, you know.
Yep, yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just because I'm a fan of the stuff that I grew up on more than what's out there now. But I just don't. A good song's a good song. I think recently somewhere, I might have been in a store and I heard that, what was that? What's that song? Hold on. Was it the remake of A Star Is Born was Lady Gaga in that, and they had a single called...
okay. Is that the song they did with Metallica?
No, it's the single from that. I saw it on an airplane once. It's
wow.
a good movie. No, it's Into the... What is it? Shallow, is that it? Something Hollow, Shallow. But it's a killer song. It's a great, and I wish I remember the name because I just heard it, and it's just a great song, great chorus, great melody, and it's rare to hear that these days, at least to me. But back in the day, man, you could hear like all those songs I mentioned into, you know, Lady Marmalade from Patti LaBelle. You know what I mean? You'd hear something from Earth, Wind and Fire. It's just like endless amounts of, whether it's the one-hit wonders or Zeppelin or whatever. It's just phenomenally written songs, you know.
Yeah, and you have a flip.
Freaking Elton John, man.
Elton John.
It's just, and say John Lennon soloed through the 70s, like we were talking about it. I don't see that in the decades following as, you know, the whole songwriting and just not hit singles, but just songs that, you know, grab people quickly, like More Than a Feeling, man, or My Sharona, man, his songs just took over immediately, you know. And, but they're amazing songs. You still put them on now, and you go, geez, that's just an amazing song.
I'm with you, and I agree so much to the point that I think kind of what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree that rock is dead, but they don't have rock stars, if you know what I mean. Like when we were growing up, Brian. I mean. I'd say the closest we've come to it is actually a band you were in recently, the Dead Daisies. I mean, I love the Dead Daisies, and the unique thing about the band is, you know, David Lowery. He's the one that started the band, the guitar player. He kind of owns the band, and he's kind of like the David Coverdale of that band. He's the one mainstay, and people are always coming and going. And it doesn't seem to really affect the popularity of the band because, and oddly enough, they got you know, Glenn Hughes in there now as the lead singer, and they've always kind of had that 70s rock, kind of Deep Purple-ish sound, but even more so with Glenn. And I love the fact that, you know, that's a band where each guy it's kind of like a hard rock Beatles, you know. Each guy in that band brings something to the band. Each guy kind of shines, you know, on their own. They got their own star power, so to speak. Very interesting band, you know.
Yeah, definitely. The difference with that and comparing it to Coverdale is vast, I think, because Coverdale was already a star, right, from the second he hit the stage with Purple, you know what I mean? And he just took it to another level on his own with Whitesnake, and he was the front man, and he was responsible for that success. And, you know, it really comes down to his voice and his presence, you know, just a badass singer, you know, so... the Daisies it was a lot of fun to do that and stuff, especially being a band, you know, a rock band with my buddies and stuff. It was a lot of fun, but it's different when, you know, when there's the person behind it is, you know, is in a position where he can spend that kind of money to make it happen. Whereas Coverdale, you know, he out and was a badass and took over.
And I will say, I was saying in the Dead Daisies case, it's even more interesting that you have all these players coming in and out of the band, and the popularity doesn't really seem to wane no matter who's in the band. I mean, they sound very different than they did with John Corabi, but it's not a bad difference, and it's just amazing when you think David Lowery is the one kind of mainstay. He's a guitar player, not the lead singer like you're making out, and a lot of times that's very hard to do, but I think part of it is he gets guys that are super talented,
Yeah, definitely.
And
he always had good lineups in there for sure.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Brian, getting back to Zeppelin, do you remember what was the first song or the first album that you really picked up on?
No, I don't remember the first song because I was probably hearing a lot of
stuff
Zeppelin on the radio.
Yeah.
Because I was very young in the 70s.
At the time,
so, I was a little kid, so there was Van Halen and Aerosmith songs and Zeppelin songs and the other bands or Rush that I'd hear on the radio. I just didn't know who they were unless you were lucky enough to catch the DJ introducing it or after the song ends, telling you who it was. But no, I think if we're gonna Zeppelin. I do remember a couple things. I remember my parents went to their friend's house. We had to drive, I don't know, many hours to get somewhere for the weekend, and I was sitting there. Maybe I just started playing drums or something, and my dad's friend had a record collection. I was kind of flipping through it and saw Zeppelin records, and I went over to my dad. I said, "Dad, can I listen to one of these?" And and he's like, "Yes." And he goes, "You can listen to one side of one record." And I think I had a choice between. It was probably Zeppelin 1 and 2.
Wow.
And I was like, well, which cover is cooler? I got to judge, by the cover.
Yeah.
And I think, I chose Zeppelin 2, and I listened to one side, and it was awesome. But I was so young. But then soon after that, on a radio station in Jersey, they did a Zeppelin Sunday, A to Z.
Wow.
They literally played every song in the Zeppelin catalog,
wow.
A to Z. And I had this little cassette recorder with these, there used to be Memorex tape.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Well, then you had the cheaper version. You could get, instead of, you could get 3 for the price of 1 if you bought Memex.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I had these, and they were 90 minutes instead of 60 or something like that. So I put the tape recorder next to my dad's speaker.
Yeah.
All day long, I just kept recording on these 3 cassettes, so I got 3 hours of it. I don't know how many songs I got, but I got a lot of it. And I used to this is right when I started playing drums. I think maybe I just got a drum set that year, and it was down in the basement, and my dad had rigged up 2 speakers downstairs from his living room stereo. So I'd go upstairs with the cassette, I'd put it in his cassette player, hit play, run downstairs, and just start playing along. But I couldn't really hear what I was playing to. I was just going for it. I didn't know what I was doing. But so I was, and I also was only getting 1 speaker of the mix. So I couldn't hear a lot of what was going on, I guess. But it was cool to be exposed just to that much Zeppelin at once.
Early,
probably
that early in your life.
9 to 10. But I didn't know what I was listening to. I didn't know which record. And then soon after that, because I was a Kiss kid, it was all about Kiss. And then right after that was Aerosmith. This was 1978.
Wow.
Somewhere right in that time, I started. I had a record player, an 8-track player, and a cassette player, and I bought. I went to the record store, and I had enough money to buy 1 record, and I chose to buy an 8-track, and I chose Zeppelin 3.
8-track, wow, yeah, you're taking me back.
Because the cover was kind of cool as a 10-year-old kid, I guess. So I bought Zeppelin 3, and we all know that that's more. Maybe there's more acoustic stuff. It's more mellow. A heavier percentage of that record is more mellow than some of the other ones. But I loved it. I loved, everything. Immigrant Song, Tangerine, Since I've Been Loving You,
wow.
The whole thing, Friends. So and then soon after that, I just started getting all the records.
Well, you kind of just made my point I was going to ask you about, which is because you're such a heavy drummer, obviously being influenced by John Bonham, but those early Zeppelin tracks, a lot of people don't even might not have even heard them because they think Led Zeppelin's is like rock and roll, A Whole Lot of Love. And some of the heavier stuff, like House of the Holy. But if you put on those first 2 Zeppelin albums, they're really, like you said, really blues influence, and you can hear it. And then you get to Zeppelin 3 and later on, and they obviously a lot of the stuff was more rock oriented. But they started out being.
But if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, really, their biggest song is, the most popular song is Stairway to Heaven, and half of it, or more than half, is acoustic. So I think that gives everybody a real good representation of what Zeppelin is right there in that song,
And let me ask you about that, because people may not be aware, Brian, that besides the great drummer you are, you're a multi-instrumentalist. You can sing lead, you can play guitar, drums, and I know many other instruments. And my question to that is, I often hear like guitar players say like the two most kind of two riffs that all guitar players want to learn is like Stairway to Heaven and Smoke on Water. Both great riffs, but what's your thought of that as far as a guy that can play the guitar? Why people want to learn those songs?
I anybody that grew up in that era probably and picked up a guitar was probably shown the same batch of riffs, because a buddy down the road had an electric guitar and an amp, and I just immediately loved the sound of it, and I wanted to learn how to do it. My dad had an acoustic, and he had already shown me at like probably 5 years old, 6 years old, how to play an E major chord. I specified major because it's harder to play a major than a minor if you've never picked up a guitar before, and a G major chord. And they showed me the riff to Day Tripper, which is definitely not an easy riff at all, especially if you've never played before. But my dad could play guitar, piano, drums, and sing and all that stuff. So, but I didn't continue. He showed me, and I was like, oh, cool. Guitar's pretty cool. But when my buddy had the electric, I went over there, and he was like, this is a power chord. And I was like, that is the coolest sound in the world. And then next to drums, of course. And then he showed me Back in Black, Iron Man, Smoke on the Water, a blues scale, a different Phrygian scale, for anybody who cares. If you know what Phrygian is. It was an interesting choice for him to show me that, and a blues scale with a flat 5. But he hit me with all this quickly, and I was like, this rules. And he showed me Iron Man. I got the first part of it, and then when I went to the next part, whatever it is, the down, like he was, that's a little more difficult. I'll show you that some other time. But yeah, man, he was also the same dude that was responsible for burning me a cassette copy of on side A, Women and Children First, and on side B, 2112, which was just, that took up my whole summer, man. That was insane to just have those two records given at the same time, and tripping on that for the summer. Wow,
you're bringing me back to I guess you and me are about the same age, but I too used to make all those mixtapes like you're talking about, and I remember all that stuff, and having a record player, and it's kind of, I'm old school that way like you, Brian, because it's kind of a shame, like a lot of kids today, they don't have the experience of going to a record store. It's like, what is a record store? Do they even exist anymore? Not too much here in the United States, unfortunately, but that was an experience, and I remember what you're talking about, like going to a record store, and I remember like as a kid, before I even knew who Iron Maiden were, I seen the record Number of a Beast in the record store, and I didn't even know nothing about the band, but I thought that was such a cool looking album cover. I thought, man, I never heard this, but I got to have it. It just looks so cool,
Yeah, my buddies and I were sitting around, and in a, I guess, Rock Mag or something, there was a page of, order these CDs or whatever, and they just had a bunch of logos of bands. One of them was Iron Maiden, and we all were like, that is a kick-ass logo. What a cool name. And my buddy ordered like a cassette or two, got it in the mail soon after, and we all just became instant Maiden fans. So their covers and their logo and their names definitely made a mark and got them in some doors quicker than other bands.
Yeah, and if you think about it, they're very smart at their marketing in the sense that there's never been a single Iron Maiden album that featured the band on the front cover. And I think the artwork is just amazing, and it's even as I'm a huge Kiss fan myself, Brian, and that's one thing with Kiss that always attracted me. But you have just as much of a great band as they are, and great music. The look, I remember seeing them like pictures of Kiss when I was a kid, thinking they were comic book heroes before I even knew it was a band, and then oh wow, they make music. Wow, that's cool too.
They really, when you look back, it was very impressionable. They just had for a kid into rock, and you get to see those characters looking like that. They really stood out. Nobody else looked like that, and anybody that, I think, what was it, maybe Funkadelic or something, Parliament Funkadelic, they would dress up crazy, or some of these other bands that would dress up crazy. But it never matched Kiss, because you were like, well, Kiss is they've covered, their faces are fully covered, but their characters don't know what they look like. And that was another amazing thing when they said that they're not going to show the public what they look like. So they just became instantly more super heroic, you know what I mean? And
there's that mystique back in the day, because this is pre-internet, and anytime anybody would try to get a photo of them, you know, they'd have security guards take the film away and stuff like that. And they're very protective of that image. And when you think, you know, Kiss has been doing it 50 years now or so, and I kind of agree with what Gene and Paul say. Like, people ask, why you have, you know, Eric and Tommy wear Ace and Peter's makeup. I get that they're original guys, you know, as far as Ace and Peter, but, you know, those iconic characters have almost become more iconic than the guys that put the makeup on, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I'd like to hear their true reasons on why.
Yeah,
because,
well, we know why. Yeah.
I mean, if I was in the room with them and if I was in the band and we were all like, let's make up characters and start messing around with makeup, and then we became these images, these superheroes, and based on things that were passionate to us, you know, the Ace, the spaceman. It's a little bit weird to be able to look back and go, yeah, I remember when we were all in the same room creating these images, and we became iconic, and we became huge in the world, and now somebody else is wearing that makeup. To me, it's like, I kind of look at it like, okay, when Eric Carr came in, he was
I hear you.
Vinny Vincent came in, he was the Ankh warrior and all that stuff, the Egyptian, whatever. But and that's fine, because that was kind of where they were at the time. But when you do the reunion tour and all four originals guys are back, it's like, okay, cool, so there's Ace and Peter, and now the makeup's back to what it started as. That's all great, but if they're going to be out of the band, I don't know how. If you looked at an arena full of Kiss fans, there's probably a large percentage that are there for what Kiss represents, and really for Gene and Paul, because Gene and Paul are the leaders. They're the front men of the band, and I guess if you have to think about, you know, the big picture Kiss, Gene probably gets the most notoriety because of the fire breathing and the blood spitting and all that stuff. Like, that's just kind of like, you know, everybody had great stuff going on stage. I mean, Paul's an amazing front man, and I love his voice and all that stuff, but Gene's character was maybe the most notable or something like that. And so I'm kind of like, I don't know if a large percentage of that audience would mind if you didn't have the Spaceman and Catman on stage. As long as you have the Star Child and the Demon, maybe the other guys would have cool kick-ass makeup designs. Would that really take away from the amount of people filling that arena?
I'm with you there, but the only thing I could say, like, I think, you know, like, for them to tell, you know, maybe Eric Singer, like, you know what, we're not going to have you dress up like people. Well, you dress up like Eric Carr, you know. That's kind of, I think, sacrilege, because the guy's, you know, no longer with us. But I'm not even saying that. I'm saying it's just like, come up with something, another kick-ass design, just because. And why does it have to be Peter's makeup? Even if they paid Peter, which I'm not sure, maybe that was the case, they bought the rights to the makeup or something. Maybe that's the case, and that's fine, but I'm just saying, why? Like, you're still playing the same songs, you're still going to have the same kick-ass show, you're going to still have the main two guys in front, and whoever is playing guitar with maybe some different, you know, still some kind of angular makeup, but it's a different design, and he's still going to play Ace's licks and Ace's, you know, parts. You know, is that going to take away from the show that much? I don't think it would. I'm with you. And the only problem, I don't have a huge problem with what they're doing, is I would have more of a problem if they had Tommy and Eric up there in the makeup, and they're trying to fool people. No, that's Peter, that's Ace, and you like, no, that's not. You know, you can tell.
Well, that would be a little crazy. Happen.
Now, from what I know, I think they kind of do it because they can, like you said, because I know I read in the books, Peter sold his rights, and I guess he kind of to Gene and Paul, thinking I guess he needed the money at the time, and you know, so they kind of got the right to do that. And Ace, from what I understand, he allows them to do it. You know, so I guess it all works out for everybody. But you know,
that's fine. But I'm just saying.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean,
why?
I think, like you said, when Eric Carr joined, he got his own makeup design. People still went Kiss was just as popular as ever. I agree with you that I don't see why people would stop going if they had their own makeup design. But
I'm a huge Kiss fan, and I would not and I'm been friends with Eric for a long time, and he's got a great gig, and he's doing great. He's a great drummer. He's a great singer, and it's all cool. And I know people take on this. So I'm just wondering if you're in the audience and watching the show, how many people at that show in the 2015, 16, 17, 18, whatever, how many people there would walk out and go, man, I got my money's worth because the Catman makeup and the Spaceman makeup were intact, compared to, the drummer is more like a lion, and the Spaceman's, the guitar player's more like a...
I'm with you. I'm with you there.
Different type of alien. Maybe, I don't know how many people would be bothered, because they're still getting Gene and Paul, and they're still getting the songs, they're still getting the show, and they're still getting the whole experience. I just don't know why it's that much of a thing where it has to continue, because as a fan, to me, I'd still be like, they kicked ass, man. They sound great. Like if it was still Eric and Tommy, they all agreed, hey man, that's cool makeup. You're going to be that character and you're that character. We still sound great. We're singing and playing great. The show's killer. I don't know if that would matter. I don't know if the Catman and Spaceman stuff would matter that much.
Being the Kiss,
I wouldn't care. I'd be like, cool, man, they kicked ass.
Being the Kiss fan I am, I'm with you. I think in a way it kind of would add to the legacy. Two new characters. I'd be all for that. But that's kind of interesting. I'll tell you the best thing about Eric Singer joining Kiss is nobody knew what a great lead singer he was until he joined Kiss. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Brian, but maybe about 10, 15 years ago, he put out this thing called the Eric Singer Project, and there's an actual CD called Lost in Space, and it's all like cover tunes. It's with him, John Corabi, and Bruce Kulick.
I know it. Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah, it's great.
Great stuff.
Eric's a great singer. He's got the same, the raspy voice as quality as Peter did, and I think Eric had it too. Eric Carr had that as well. Eric's great.
Now you mentioned, there's obvious influence of John Bonham on you, but you mentioned your dad was a musician as well, and he kind of taught you some stuff. How big of an influence was, what your dad was doing musically to you becoming a musician?
Well, he was supportive. He didn't push me, but he was just supportive. So as opposed to having a dad that wasn't into music, I had a dad that could play music.
That's
and
cool.
You walk in the dining room, he'd be playing piano and singing. He'd be playing guitar. He'd be cranking his Beatles and his Beach Boys, and I have. My whole Beatles influence came from my dad. So he just, because he loved cranking his music. When he's home on the weekend, he's going to crank the music in the living room. So I'm going to get exposed to everything. And he was more on the Beatles side, but he was also cranking Neil Young and the Eagles and America, and I was getting exposed to that, and I made note of that. And if there was stuff I liked in his collection, I'd go, hey Dad, can I borrow your record and go practice to it? And he'd be like, yes, but as soon as you're finished, don't want it back down, and put it back down with my records. So but it was cool because it's like, just be respectful, because I'm a little kid and I might be, his records mean something to him. He doesn't want him getting trashed or busted up or whatever. So, but there'd be times I'd grab a Beatles record, or I'd grab or he'd be cranking Frampton. I remember playing the Eagles Long Run because he was cranking the Long Run.
Wow.
I loved the song Those Shoes, And I remember, just wanting to see if I could get that groove going on drums and everything. So it was, and he was just supportive. I think he was also heavily into sports and stuff. So which was great because I was all into sports and I was into music. So it was. But sooner or later, I got out of sports. I didn't really care, and it was really all about drums and music. And so I just think after when I grew up and started being professional or whatever, I think he just dug the fact that he watched me, his first son grow up into drums and made a career out of it and made it his thing. I think he was just, he was just proud because he's into music.
And it's interesting that you would be such a big Kiss fan, because I've heard Gene and Paul say over years what big Beatles fans, how big of an influence the Beatles was on them. And if you listen to pretty much any song in the Kiss catalog, they kind of got a Beatles influence in the sense all the songs, like the Beatles songs, got great hooks and memorable. I mean, 50 years later, these tunes are still being played on the radio.
Yeah, they were definitely. I mean, I don't know who wasn't
influenced by the Beatles. Yeah. And let me ask you, as far as the drums, what made you kind of gravitate towards the drums as your main instrument? Was it because you're a young man and a lot of young men like to get their aggression out, or did it have anything to do?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with aggression. It was just to do with, I just would see and hear drums, and I thought, and I've said this a million times, people ask me because there's no real better way to put it, at least in my mind, was if there was a mountain of all things cool, at the top of that mountain was a set of drums, and that's just how I thought about drums, with the look of the drums, the sound of the drums, before I played drums. It was really that simple. There was nothing, nobody pushed me in one direction this way or that way. That was it. It just, and I did think as a kid, I thought drums were so badass that everybody in the world probably wants to play the drums, but they can't because either they can't afford a drum set or they don't have the space to play them, or it's too loud. But I honestly thought everybody probably wants to own a drum set, and I'm probably still right to this day. Show me one person that wouldn't think it's cool to have a drum set in their living room and be able to go for playing it whenever they want. So that was it. That was it. It was one of those things, and I look back and I'm just like, wow, this is like all these decades later. This is what I do, and I still look forward to it, and I'm still always wanting to get better, and it still engulfs a serious chunk of my time on this planet as an adult, and so it's great because I don't know any other way. I wouldn't know what the meaning of I'm probably a little closer to understanding whatever the big picture of life is, because to me it's real simple. It's just like, find stuff you love and do it, and if you can survive doing it, you're probably going to be happier than most people who didn't find what they love. And if you love it, you're going to have to practice it. Some people are gifted, and things just happen. For me, I didn't have to really practice learning how to play a drum beat. I just kind of sat down, I felt it, but that's because I wanted to so badly. But at the same time, if somebody showed me something new or I had to learn something, I could practice the rest of my life and not even be close to how good I probably could or should be. But I'm just saying the basics of rock drumming and the fundamentals of independence and all that stuff, it was kind of there. And I love the feeling of when, and I'm talking as a little kid starting to play, when I did something new, learned a new fill, or the independence was increased to the next level. I loved that feeling of what it did to me. It made me feel like I'm getting this much closer to things in my head that I can't explain. I just know I have to do them, and that's great. That's great, and that's what I tell anybody, man. Wherever you are in life, whatever you're doing,
enjoy it.
If there's something you want to do, just you got to try it. You have to put some time in and just see if you can get closer to it. And
you've been doing this long enough, Brian, that you never had any shortage of gigs, and I think a huge part of that is your obvious huge talent that you are. But I mean, again, you've been doing it long enough that when somebody needs a drummer, hey, do you know any good drummers? And you're one of the guys on that list that people constantly are, Brian Tichy, I know who he played with Whitesnake, with Dead Daisies, whatever. And you're super talented in the sense that you're not just a drummer, but that's primarily what you're known for. But like I said, you can play the guitar and other instruments. And I mean, I remember a few years back you had a band or something with Sass Jordan. So you've been all over the place, and you're associated with many great bands and projects. And again, that's just because you've been doing this long enough. You're great at what you do, and you start.
It's not. Trust me, it's not like there's the phone just rings, all of a sudden I miraculously have another gig. And
no, I hear you. No,
but I'm saying just for anybody out there, it sounds like looking at it from a distance. He's been playing a long time. He's played with these notable people, but man, it's just like anybody. There's downtime unless you're like in some solid band you started and you're one of the founding members, and whether it's AC/DC or Rush or Van Halen or something like that. If you're a hired gun, you never know when your time comes in that band, or when things change. And along with that, I've also made decisions to leave some of these bands, and it's not because there's a problem. It's just because I just look at where I'm at and I go, I want to prove more to myself somehow I don't have all the answers, but I figure if I got this far, I should probably try to get further and try to do that sooner than later, because you don't know how long you're on this damn planet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's also, man, there's sort of the luck of there's a little bit of luck involved, but I think a lot of it is the more you do, the more people know your name, and the more you can prove yourself in different situations. There's your resume building, and then just by default, you've met more people, you've played with more people, so your name may come up quicker. But the main thing is to get in whatever situation you're in and be able to adapt. And there's some amazing players out there that I would not want to ever hear play differently than how they play in their gig, whatever their main gig is. I don't want to hear them change their style, but I have done that as a means of survival and as a means of being a fan. I just put myself in a position in these bands of like, what was it like when I practiced drums to these records as a kid? Well, I would make myself a little more mechanical for this thing, or I'd make myself looser for this, and I just try and fit into the vibe that I thought the band sounded like, and that's how I approach it now. I basically keep my mouth shut.
There you go.
And play the drums, and that's like Frank Zappa said, shut up and play the guitar. It's really that, just shut up, and nobody really cares about anything outside of the fact that, are you making the band feel good? Okay, now you got the gig. All right, now we'll get to know you. I mean, unless you're an instant asshole walking into the room. But I just enjoy people taking note of you for your talent more than for you having to speak up about it or make yourself known because you're talking about yourself,
Oh, no.
So but you can still be a great drummer and a great person, and a nice guy and all that stuff, and come into a gig and be have a resume, and somehow your vibe doesn't work, doesn't gel with the band. I've seen drummers come in for auditions in bands I was in, and they're great, and just something doesn't click with them in the band, but then next month they'll be in some other big band kicking ass, so who knows? I just know that I mean, like, to play with I don't know, let's just say Ozzy or whatever. I grew up playing all that stuff, and that's a certain way of playing. But then if I'm going to go play with Don Felder from the Eagles, that's a whole different feel. It's a whole other mentality, and it's just it's still rock drums, but I just put myself in. You have to be a little bit more following this direction when you're playing with Ozzy or Whitesnake. But then if you're going to go play with Felder, you're playing a whole different style. Yeah, it's still rock drums, but you just got to be smart about it a little bit.
I hear you. Now, before I let you go, I want to get a little more into the annual Bonzo Bash, because you made a very good point that it's kind of funny, but the last several years, Bonzo Bash has kind of become your thing, what you're known for. And I know you put this show on like once a year, but I know like it takes like almost a whole year to put the show together and get the guests and everything that's going to appear. But you're very involved with that, and that's kind of really become your thing. So you start out doing the Moby Dicks, and then you start doing this annual event. Talk about that decision that we're going to do the Bonzo Bash.
It started with Bonzo Bash was first, and then the Moby Dicks came after that. That was a result of the Bonzo Bash stuff. But no, I didn't get involved with it over time. I had the idea.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Happened. There was one person sitting at home alone listening to Bonzo's Montreux and thought of this idea. What if I put a drum kit at the front of the stage and had a bunch of drummers pick their favorite song with a house band? I think that would be something I'd love to see, and that would be a shit ton of fun. It was it was May of 2010, and I think I wrote a Facebook post and mentioned a couple buddies in there, like, hey, we should all do this. And then soon after, it could have been weeks after that little idea, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, if I did this, I'll just book a rehearsal room on a Saturday night, and I'll just have everybody come over, and we'll jam, we'll have a party. Get a keg of beer and have everybody come over, and it'll just be fun, and that's really all I was going to do. It was not going to be like filming it or making it. It was none of that. It was just a party, because it sounded like something fun. And then I thought, well, what if everybody actually did show up? Maybe people would want to see it. Well, people probably would want to see it if you get a bunch of known drummers on the same kid playing Zeppelin, but I was like, I don't feel like booking a gig and dealing with all that crap. I'll just stick to getting a rehearsal room. But did sound like a pretty tangible thing. And at the time, I was my buddy, my partner in Bonzo Bash, Joe Sutton. He's a local Hollywood promoter, and he was doing these like monthly club gigs, and he'd have like a house band. He'd hire us, and we'd learn a bunch of songs, have some fun. And he called me to talk to me about the next gig coming up, and I said, "Hey Joe, I got this." And he was working at this club called Key Club in West Hollywood.
I remember, yeah.
It used to be first. It was called. Oh God, there was the big club, man. Gazzari's, I think it was Gazzari's.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I said, "Hey Joe, what do you think of this idea?" And I explained it to him really quickly, and he goes, "I think that's a really cool idea, man." And then he checked with the Key Club, and they actually had. So this is like May or June we're talking, and they actually had. September 25th, 2010, which was a Saturday night, open for me to do that, and that was the 30th anniversary of Bonham's passing.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, holy shit! Not only are we going to do this, but it's going to be in Hollywood on a Saturday night at a badass club.
Wow, yeah.
This is going to be a lot of fun, and I just started. I still wasn't taking it
too serious.
Super serious.
Yeah.
Like I was, but it was like, well, how hard is this? You get a band. We all love Zeppelin. The guys learn, and you just write to each drummer. You go, hey, pick a few Zeppelin songs. Like, give me your top 3, 4 or 5, whatever. And just in case somebody else picks one, there's I see other songs you may want to do. And it was that easy. And everybody was like, yeah. We ended up. Look back at the lineup, man. It was a really impressive lineup, including, unbeknownst to myself, it was I didn't make this happen. It just ended up happening this way. That Jason Bonham was in town about to record a black what's the communion band?
Black Country Communion. Yeah.
Black. I keep wanting to say black something else. Black Country Communion. They were recording maybe their first record then or something.
Wow.
So he was going to be in town, and his sister lived here, and his John Bonham's sister Deborah and Pat. It's John's wife, so they were all ended up going to be in town that night. So they all were there, which just made it even heavier because it was the first show. And but yeah, it was badass, and that's it. So we did it pretty much annually, and then we took it to the East Coast. I think in May we did a few gigs for a couple of years in a row on the East Coast, and we even brought it to Moscow for a NAMM event there. We did a Saturday night there, which was great.
How
People
cool
running
is that?
it helped me find 20 Russian drummers and a Russian Zeppelin tribute band, and we flew over there, and we rehearsed for a couple of days, and it was a lot of fun. It was a trip just to be able to say it went that far. This little idea, and so that's that, and but this year I didn't do it. I was just there was too many things going on. January this year at NAMM, I didn't do anything at NAMM. It was I'd have to think back why, because it does take a bunch of months to put together. I guess you can do it quickly if you had to, but if you want to do it right and really put time and energy and proper time and energy into it, and not rush yourself and not trip over yourself because you're squeezing too much together, you've got to give yourself 3-4 months, or by the end of the summer you got to be talking about it and figuring out what you're going to do. And we also didn't we added on to it with other events, so which just made it insane, the amount of work that it took,
money
because
and effort.
we would do a BONZO BASH one night, then we do a Randy Rhoads Remembered, which was basically a mirror image of a BONZO BASH.
And then you had a Bon Scott one, I believe, Bon Scott one too, didn't you?
Yeah, and that's what happened. We had a Who one called the Ox and Loon, which was a celebration of
John Entwistle
and Moon, and we've done a couple Rush-based ones, and it was just because it all started. That wasn't the intent. It was just because BONZO BASH got going, the venue we were playing at, they had 2 nights open. They had a Friday and Saturday,
wow.
and I was like, "There's so many drummers. Why don't we just do 2 nights? Then I can just maybe some guys will play 2 nights. Maybe some guy can't make it Friday and he can do Saturday."
Wow.
And I was like, let's go for it. But then after thinking about it, we were like, why? Let's keep it at 1 night rather than most people come to the first night and the second night isn't as popular. We don't want it to look like that, just for whatever reason, because we had never done it before. Who knows if you're biting off more than you could chew, kind of thing. And so we said, all right, well, let's not give them the night back. Let's keep the night. But man, we already talked. My partner already had said years before, if we ever did this for a guitar player, we got to do it for Randy. And because Randy, looking back, was really, when Blizzard of Oz came out and I was in 7th grade, that was such a huge reason of me getting way more into guitar. I was already getting more into guitar, but I heard that and I was like, I have to learn how to do this. I have to learn this. I absolutely love this. And so I got so into Randy. And yeah, so it just made sense. And there's so many guitar players that just absolutely worship Randy, and I just thought it'd be a lot of fun to play every song from Blizzard and Diary. And I had just done a tour with Rudy Sarzo on bass. I filled in for Simon Wright with Jeff Tate's Queensryche. So we had. So Rudy and I were friends and stuff, but we got to play with Jeff every night for a month, and I was like, so I called Rudy, like, would you be into doing this? And he's like, yeah, let's go for it, and that was that. So we were off and running, but yeah, so it ended up being a lot. It's a ton of work and stuff, but I looked at it like, hey, if I'm going to come to NAMM and I can have an opportunity to take over a venue and be the more or less the boss. I'm never the boss in anything I do. I'm a hired drummer. I got to make kick ass on drums and smile and make sure your boss is happy and make sure everything grooves. But on this side, I can come up with funny ideas and have it as free as I want, have it as tight as I want, and I tried to. I know this isn't. We're not. You didn't ask me about this, but in those shows, I really did try to keep it like what Paige says about Zeppelin, tight but loose. The whole light and shade thing. I would try and have it where it comes across like it's well thought out, but at the same time, don't
overthink it.
Have everything written in stone. Where you bug out if there's a last minute change. Just embrace it. It's like improv. It's like, hey man, if you can't handle a little bit of change, I mean, we got a drum set, a bunch of drummers, and a house band that knows a bunch of Zeppelin. If something doesn't go right or wrong, hey, this isn't a band on tour. This is like this is a throw and go thing. This is like just jump in the fire. You know what I mean?
So, I'll tell you, Brian.
I always kept that in the back of my head. I just want anybody that was involved to have fun. And even though there might be a lot of work and stuff going on behind the scenes, that really doesn't matter. What matters is that anybody that takes their time to come to rehearsal and is excited about being a part of this event, I want them to have it be a great hang, which it always was. It was always a great drum community hang going on. And I never. There's so many things I didn't look at putting that show together. I never really looked at what it does for your name. It shows that you can do this. You can actually be organized enough to put this kind of event on. Yeah, man, it was cool in a lot of ways. But the main thing was as long as everybody's having fun.
And here's the thing. What I want to say about it is, it's all throughout the interview here. I've been throwing out your resume, but here's the thing. In the last several years since you've been doing Bonzo Bash, you're the man behind Bonzo Bash. This is kind of your thing now. One of the things that you're really, when think of people hear the name Brian Tichy, Bonzo Bash automatically comes to mind. And I love the fact that this just started out as a little idea, because it started out probably you wanting to kind of find a way to pay tribute to your hero, John Bonham. But, like you said, you could have easily just do what a lot of people do. Well, just put together a great, a great tribute night or something. But you took it a step further. And what I really dig about this is you like the different drummers playing that night, they're kind of a highlight of the show. I remember interviewing Carmine a piece several years ago, and he was telling me, he says, I'm obviously a real physical player, but my thing with the drums is no matter where I am on the stage, I want people to take notice. Like Carmine, I don't know if people are even aware, he's the one that started off Tower Records Drumathon that they had for several years. I don't know if they still do that, but that was his thing. And I love the fact that this just started off with a little idea you had, and you took it to the next level.
Yeah, and it's and it involved my idols and drumming peers that I didn't know that I became friends with, and so there's so many great things, and just what you learn about just putting a show like that on, just the responsibility of it, and so you learn a lot quickly. You learn a lot about how to keep something organized and be, it's a business after a while. Man, there's more going on than just getting behind drums and jamming. Excuse me, I'm going to cough here.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Excuse you. Yes.
All right, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay. I was just going to say, we'll get ready to wrap it up. I just want to say that Bonzo Bash, I will tell people. After that, a lot of other people started putting on great events. You were kind of at the forefront of that. I mean, I think probably one that really comes to mind next to Bonzo Bash is the one they started doing called Keith St. John's thing, Remembering Ronnie Montrose, or Ronnie Montrose Remembered or something like that.
That was an interesting name, right next door to Randy Rhoads Remembered. It's funny, but there's been other Bonzo Bash type shows, like similar ones, which I'm just like, cool. Actually, somebody told me like a year after we did it, or a couple of years later, somebody was doing one in Seattle, and they were calling it Bonzo Bash, and I'm like, man, I don't care if you do the show, just don't call it that name, because if it goes awesome, you want to be able to take your own credit, and you don't want it to be associated to me. And if it goes over like a Led Zeppelin, no pun intended, then I don't want to be tied to that. I don't want people thinking I had anything to do with your show. You know, if it's a goof, if it's not done professionally, or it's not done where people had a good time, then I don't want to be associated with that. So I know there's been a couple. There's a dude in Canada that's my buddy that's put on his own. I think he calls it like a night for Bonham, or somebody else calls it.
That's cool.
Celebration, whatever. But that's cool. There's been like 4 or 5 around there. One in Hawaii. I think they were actually calling it Bonzo Bash for years, and somebody else and told them, it's probably not a really good idea, because there's already a Bonzo Bash. Do it, But yeah, the concept of honoring John Bonham, the mightiest rock drummer ever, and putting the drums at the forefront and making a night out of it. It's hey, do it wherever you want. It's just more drum love and more Bonham love.
I love the fact that you could have made it a night of like just Brian Tichy sitting behind the drums and doing his tribute to Bonzo, but you get your other friends involved, your other drum friends, and highlight what they do too. I just love that, And what I think makes the Ronnie Montrose one so great is. A lot of people, when they hear Ronnie Montrose, they think of those first 2 albums with Sammy Hagar. Great albums in their own right, but if you really dig into the Montrose catalog, there's a lot of great music. And I think since Ronnie's passing, and they've been putting on this annual event, people are becoming more aware of that,
Right, the good thing about the Bonzo Bash, it's the Zeppelin catalog, which is just some of the most badass rock music ever, so you can't lose. Like, everybody there has pretty much heard every song that's going to be played, and that's another thing. And I wasn't going to. It was never about me doing it myself. And honestly, if I thought I was going to do that myself, cool. But that's not even close to comparing what it's going to be like when you see on the posters 20 drummers from 20 rock bands, all these well-known drummers getting together on one drum set for honoring one drummer. I think that's what is the enticing factor to somebody who they have never seen the show, or the first time we did it. It's like, wait, all these people are coming together. All these drummers from all these well-known bands. It's like, I mean, it was literally
mind-blowing, I bet.
Danny Carey from Tool, and you had Abe Laboriel from Paul McCartney, and you had Frankie Manelli from Quiet Riot, and Kotak from Scorpions, and Chad Smith from the Chili's, and I mean, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction, Jimmy Dana from
list goes on and on.
Put all these badass drummers on the same kit. It's just it was never done before, so it's a little bit of a spectacle too. It's just like, cool, this is something different that's never happened, but it's all under the umbrella of John Bonham.
And it's interesting, that list of players you just mentioned. Like, let's take Stephen Perkins, for example, from Jane's Addiction. Jane's Addiction doesn't sound a lot like Led Zeppelin, but yet here's a cat that was obviously influenced by him. It's cool that you got those players that are so drastically different.
Yeah, but like you'd be hard pressed to find a drummer that wasn't influenced by Bonham. I mean, that's just the way it goes. That's why it's not a hard show to put together as far as finding people, the drummers that grew up on Zeppelin and Bonham. It's like that's why I think it was like, hey man, if you want to be a part of this, cool. If you want to rehearse, great. If not, that's fine. Just tell us the song you want to play, and we'll go for it. I just want to make it fun for everybody. But it's great because there's some of these guys are now my good friends that I'm like, shit, man, if we knew each other a long time ago, we
could have done it. We would
have had a nice long relationship going on here, because we're really cut from the same cloth, and we're all drummers, and we all grew up on the same stuff,
We'll get ready to wrap it up. Before I do it, Brian, I want to ask you about 3 more questions. Let me ask you now. Can you believe 2020? 2020 alone. It marks the 40th anniversary of a couple of people we've been talking about. Obviously, John Bonham, Bon Scott, John Lennon. Can you believe all of these guys have been gone 40 years now?
Well, yes, I can believe it, but it sucks, you know.
Yeah.
Because there was always that chance that those guys would have still been around, and I wish the three mentioned were still around because I would love to hear where John Lennon would be at right now. Would he and Paul and Ringo be out there
doing their thing?
You know, I mean, I would probably think they would. You know, I think you know you go through life and you look back and you go, hey man, we all went through some stuff, but let's reconvene and kind of put a cherry on top of what we've done. You know what I mean? And go out swinging, go out big, and all that stuff. But yeah, man, it's that's life, man. You know, every day you wake up, you don't know what's going to happen, and you just hope for the best. And,
now, were you old enough at the time in 1980 when John Bonham's death was announced? Did it really have any effect on you, or do you remember where you were, or hearing it on TV or the radio or anything?
No, I don't remember where I was. I had just turned 12 years old.
Okay,
so it was like, you know, but I did. It was similar to Randy Rhoads. It was kind of like, you know, is this really happening, or is this a rumor? Because you just hear somebody tells you they heard something on the radio, and it just takes a little bit. But yeah, I was already way into Zeppelin. It was a bummer, but I was so young. It was like there was still such a long history of Zeppelin at that point in time. You know, for like 12 years of Zeppelin stuff. So being so young, it was like I don't remember. You know,
the impact didn't have it.
It wasn't the same as I don't know. Probably just because I was younger. I was so young, but it wasn't the same as like when you find out, you know, Chris Cornell or Eddie Van Halen or Neil Peart passes. You know, it's like that. That's like I don't know why. It's just maybe you're just because you're older, you just look at everything different. But I remember being bummed, and it was also a long time ago. I don't remember.
Like you said, you were young, and I was just kind of thinking too, because you were so young, and I was too at the time. That it didn't really have an impact on us till maybe we were a little older, you know, years later. You know, and it's kind of interesting to the point you mentioned Neil Peart a couple times, which I know you were influenced by him as well. He recently passed this year, and it's kind of interesting because he's not even the original drummer, but he's and he's still considered a new guy, if you know what I mean, because he's not the original drummer, but he wrote all those. He wrote most of those Rush hits that we all love. You know, he was a songwriter, he was a drummer. I mean, Neil Peart joining Rush really, you know. He really changed the sound of the band, if you know what I mean. He became Rush.
Yeah, well, he was a perfect fit. He was the lyricist. Yeah, he wrote the lyrics. I guess soon after he joined, he started taking over the lyrics, which is great because I love everybody. If you're into Rush, you love what Neil wrote, you know. And he made it. He put them in a probably going down the path that they wanted to go down. The perfect drummer for what they were going to be going for in the next, you know, few years to come, you know, and develop into this insanely amazing, you know, progressive rock band, and taking chances and standing out and sounding like nobody else. You know, he was the perfect drummer to take that to the next level. It's just amazing.
And getting back to Zeppelin for a minute, I'm assuming that you kind of think that the guys made the right decision when Bonham died to call it quits rather than try to replace him.
As much as you go, put somebody else in there that could kick ass and give us some more music. I mean,
wouldn't be the
that's
same.
Fine, but there's certain people that you can say that they can't be replaced. It's like, okay, but you say that, but Bon Scott was replaced, and they replaced him with a bat. Like, I mean, who did? Brian Johnson just killed it, and Sammy Hagar came in and took over for David Lee Roth, and they went on and just created. You know, it's a bit of a different band, and maybe they got a little more melodic or whatever, but they're still, you know, they kick ass. They didn't fall off the face of the earth. You know, they got bigger actually, but there's some people like I wouldn't want to hear Bonham replaced, and I wouldn't want to hear like Eddie Van Halen or Neil Peart replaced, and I wouldn't want to hear Angus Young replaced. Because the big picture, but see, at the same time it's weird because I wouldn't want to see David Lee Roth replaced, but they did, but they came out with a bit of a different sound. It was still Van Halen, but so it's hard to say. It's like
you just don't know. You just don't know what you don't know.
I was a huge Kiss fan as a kid. I probably wouldn't want to Ace replaced, and I was a kid when they replaced him, and they moved on and continued being Kiss and all that stuff. But yeah, there's just certain people that in the case of Zeppelin being that big and his just his groove and his sound and what he made that band feel like, it's really untouchable. It's really like, could other drummers come in there and do a good job? Yeah, definitely. But when it comes to what Bonham's doing with them in a room when they're writing a song, how he's feeling a groove, how he's thinking about that song, and then his drum sound, then how they mic his drums, and how that comes across in the final mix of a song, I don't think there's anybody that could do that, you know. And also it's his personality. How does he get along with the guys? And all that time together, all that history of being the unknowns more or less in the UK to becoming like the biggest band in the world is, somebody jumping in and trying to do all that John Bonham represents is it's just nearly impossible. But I would say if I did want to hear one person get in there and give it a go and do it, I would have thought, for me, I would think Michael DeRosier from Heart would be the guy I'd probably want to hear do it, because I absolutely love his drumming. I think he's got an insanely solid, funky groove, and I just hear similarities in his playing. There's like I said, there's definitely some drummers that could do it, but it's not on them.
Because I read
it can become a different thing.
Because I read in the 80s, they did like one gig, I think, the 40th anniversary of Atlantic Records or something, and I think they got Phil Collins, of all people, from Genesis to play the gig, and he's a great drummer in his own right, but again, it just wasn't the same as John Bonham, and I think that's part of the reason the only other guy that ever got to fill the shoes was Jason Bonham, rightfully so,
Well, it was at the 40th anniversary, I believe that was Jason playing there, and Phil Collins played at the Live Aid.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Live Aid show, and he played double drums with Tony Thompson from Power Station and Chic.
Wow.
It was the two of them together. Yeah, I mean, you could read about all this and see it on YouTube and stuff. But yeah, it was just like a one-off. Like and also bringing up Phil Collins, who I absolutely love in so many ways. Like, I completely love everything about Phil. But he was hugely successful in
his own right.
Drummer, writer, band
singer,
member, solo artist, everything. He was just, and he flew from across the world to do both Live Aid. So he did where was the first one? The second one was Philly. And the first one was in London or something, and he had to take a jet across, and he played both places in the same day, and he showed up there burnt, and there was no rehearsal, and then he's playing with Tony Thompson, who maybe did rehearse with the guys, but, you got this pressure of being, the drummers on stage with the guys in Zeppelin, which is already, there's so much pressure there, and you're on TV, and it's Live Aid, and it's like the biggest show going.
I hear you.
It's not going to be. That's a tall order, and so, because people say, Phil, they weren't happy with Phil, but if you watch it, it's like Phil's no dummy. He's a drummer.
He's a great.
He was in there just trying to make it. He was just trying to more or less follow. And Tony Thompson, who's also another badass, he was maybe more or less leading the way because he was already there with the guys. And if you didn't rehearse stuff, and somebody does a fill, or one of the two drummers, goes a little off here or there, it could make the impression may look like, Phil just showed up and winged it and messed it all up. But no, he didn't.
No, I mean, Phil Collins, I love him too. He's a great drummer, great entertainer all around. But I think it's just one of those things too that, like, Queen, for example, tried to do it with Paul Rodgers, and it just didn't work. It seems to be fans like it better with Adam Lambert. For what reason? I think he's more like Freddie in a lot of ways. So.
Well, he's more like Freddie, and Paul put a bluesier slant on it. He's freaking Paul Rodgers. He's a legend, and that's what they probably said. Okay, do your thing because you're Paul Rodgers. But it's like anything. When you go see a band that
it has to fit right.
So many songs everybody knows. You're going to want to hear that familiarity there. And Paul maybe wasn't doing that, but he probably wasn't supposed to. Whereas Adam Lambert did do it, and
Yeah,
you know,
it works. It fits better.
But there's no that you can't even compare that stuff to like a one-off jam with Phil Collins.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
A couple songs.
I just think
just like that's like a hit or miss thing. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And so, Brian, last two questions. Okay, in regards to Bonzo Bash, you didn't do it this year, and I know probably next year may or not because of the COVID stuff. Who knows when people will be back to performing live again? But if it stays like it is for the next few years, could you ever see making it into like a virtual event, or would you want to wait till you could go back to doing it live?
No, I would have, because it was the 40th anniversary this year. Yeah. I would have
done something.
I probably would have in September said let's do something, but you know, it's the coronavirus stuff. I
just can't do it.
And now that we're going into 2021, where a lot of things are still going to be
canceled,
compromised as far as tours and live shows. You know, not being able to be fully packed and full capacity and stuff, and all the social distancing. You know, it's something to think about. You know, it depends on what I'm doing next year and how busy I am. But I wouldn't rule out like just saying, hey, everybody, you know, let's
see.
I'll put it together. Just at home. You know, I just did it for Modern Drummer. They did their 2020 festival, which was mainly a tribute to Neil Peart, and everybody, and I did. There was 30 drummers or something that performed. It was like a 3-hour thing, and everybody filmed their performances at home and sent them to Modern Drummer, and they put it all together, and they did a really really great job. So looking at that, just going, really, how hard is it, man? If you say I'm going to do this, and a drummer, you know, wants to do it and picks a song and does it at their house, the difference is we play. The drummers show up and play with a house band.
I hear you.
Now, but then at the same time, if I was going to think about that aspect of it, then maybe I would just get some cameras and get a rehearsal room and just have the band there and have drummers show up and film it. And
it kind of be a different experience, but to me, it's kind of what the future is right now, and it beats kind of. It beats kind of not doing it. You know what I mean? And I mean, like where I live.
Well, it really just matters. Like when next year comes around, I just see what the schedule's like, and okay, if I'm going to do this, how much time is needed to put it together, and do I have that time? You know, and if I do, you know, why not? You know, if I think it's going to be fun and people are into it, then why not? I mean, it really feels like a live thing. There's so many things that happen off the cuff in those shows because there's no rules, and that's what I love about it. But at the same time, whatever, you know. You know.
And final question for today. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because I know two of the latest things you're involved with is a recently released a new Lynch Mob kind of reimagined album. You were part of that, so what was that like to be part of that?
That was cool. Before the coronavirus stuff happened, we already had that on it. That was already being recorded and put together, and we had a bunch of touring happening throughout the year, which all got shelved, and so but it was a lot of fun. You know, we just George was super open about it, conceptually. He was he was like, I don't want to redo this, and it was not based on let's do the record. It was based on or let's not. It wasn't like, hey, let's redo all these songs. It was more I reminded him, oh, dude, your record came out 30 years ago.
Wow.
And I was like, so why don't you just maybe put a little more attention to that and make that part of the press. You know, like we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Wicked Sensation. Why don't we just play the whole damn record, man? Like this is you're only going to get this 30th. You know, this is the 30th anniversary. You know, that's a pretty damn good year to do this. 30 years later, you and Oni are back together playing. And he said, yeah, cool. So they started promoting that, and then
COVID hit.
I don't know, one of us said something about, if you could re-record it, and looking back, he was like, well, if we're going to do it, I want to do it differently. And I'm like, it's cool. We can just do it a little more raw, not as fully blown out production-wise as the original, and groove-wise and song structure and vibe-wise, we can just take different chances, which George is great about. You know, if you listen to the record, whether you like the original, whether you like the reimagined version or not, you have to respect the fact that it was just like it was just honoring something from 30 years ago, and the fact that Oni and George are together 30 years later, and let's just put a spin spin on it. Let's have fun. Let's make this a little more like ZZ Top. Let's get a little more metal with this. Let's like strip this down a bit. And it was just fun to do that. Yeah,
and it looks like that's going to be the final product from Lynch Mob. Oddly enough, I mean, were you surprised when you heard that George had decided because of a Lynch Mob name in that he was going to kind of put Lynch Mob to rest? How surprised were you when you heard that?
No, I mean, it's his call.
Obviously.
I didn't live it, you know. It's like I saw something where he said, you know, hey, it's always been a little bit of a thing in the back, you know, throughout time. You know, it's been a bit of a thing that's been brought up, but maybe I don't want to say, he felt the pressure of the.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I just was.
But at the same time, that's probably it's sensible to assume that.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, 30 years later, hey, he's just saying, I'm George Lynch. I'm a guitar legend. I don't have to. I'm still George Lynch. You know, like
time to move on.
Maybe even mentioned this before he announced it. And I may even said, dude, just like instead of being Lynch Mob, just call it George Lynch's Mob or George Lynch Band, whatever. It's still Lynch. You know, it's still all about you. So you got the deal. You left Dokken and got the deal and made it what it was and put the thing together. And you know, and you're George Lynch. And you still get up and kick ass on stage. And so, I mean, if I was.
I hear you.
It's his decision, and it's fine. You know,
it's his call, like you said.
It's no real big. I don't think it's that big of a deal because you're still going to go see him with whatever group of people he's playing with, and he's still going to throw Lynch Mob songs in there. And he has like 5, 6, 7 other bands, so it's like he's just keeping busy. And it's just a decision he made at this point in his life. You know?
Yeah. And then the final thing I want to ask you about, which I'd love to do like a separate interview and talk more in detail about, is I know you're involved with this other project. I believe it's called Silver Tide. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that would be. I don't know if Silver Tide's a band, but we're called Silver Thorn.
That's what I'm talking. Excuse me. Okay, that's.
Yeah, no, hey, whatever. There's. We didn't even think about it, but wait, there are actually quite a few other silver-based.
Yeah. That's bands, probably what I'm confused with.
But no, Silverthorn. It was something that it's still moving right now, but this year got screwed up. And if you're a brand new band coming out and you get hit with a year of every live music canceled, it kind of screws up the progress of the new band. But it's myself.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just saying you have a CD out, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
We put the EP out in February, and it was literally like the end of February, and then it was like a few weeks later, everything's getting shut down. So
wow, yeah.
There's not much you can do with that. But it's myself on drums and singer Pete Shoulder, he's the singer, guitar player, and Daniel Spree on bass. And Pete and I put it together a couple years ago. We had a project, so more or less, I guess, a side project or something at the time, with the DeLeo brothers from Stone Temple Pilots, and we had recorded pretty much a full record was done, and they didn't have a singer for STP at the time, and I don't think if they weren't sure if they were going to find a guy to carry on with, and but the two of them, along with me, we had been talking about doing something if we had found the right singer, and Pete Shoulder auditioned for STP, but they heard his voice like, man, yeah, he can do this, but he's got a whole other thing going that we'd like to take advantage of instead of putting him into the STP box and singing that style. So when they sent me his recording of him, I was like, man, this guy's insane.
Wow,
it's amazing. So we started recording a few months after that, and then somewhere months after that, the DeLeos found the new singer they have in STP, and they had to choose a path. Man, are we going to continue? You know, they found this guy and worked with him a bit, and
why not? Yeah,
he was the right guy. So do we start a brand new band from the ground again, or starting from the ground up, or do we carry on with this guy we're excited about with STP, which we've got 30 years in? We're in 30 years deep now, and so it sucks for us to kind of hear that's the path that we're going to choose, but at the same time, we're STP fans, and they're a killer band, and the DeLeos are amazing musicians and great songwriters and all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, man, you've done so great with this band. Why would you not want to keep that thing rolling? So it became a back burner issue. We're going to put it on the back burner indefinitely. And being that, that was a couple years ago, when Pete and I hit it off, through this project, we realized we were cut from the same cloth, and we were like, I was like, why don't you come back out? He lives in London. England, sorry, in Newcastle or something. He's like, come back out, man. Let's write. Let's just see what we can do. And we wrote for about a month and got a ton of songs together, and soon after we got signed a deal with Golden Robot Records, they put the EP out and a couple singles out, and it's a great thing, and I hope to see. We've got a new record we're making right now. I mean, we got all the music's there, so it's just a matter of getting it recorded. Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking time talking to me today, Brian. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
No problem.